Hello students, today we will discuss about the father of historical novels. Okay, यानी कि सर वाल्टर स्कॉट हैं जो कि फादर ऑफ हिस्टोरिकल नॉवेल्स कहे जाते हैं। इन जो है इनके बारे में पढ़ते हैं। अ शॉर्ट बायोग्राफी। Walter Scott was born in Edinburgh as the son of solicitor Walter Scott and Annie, a daughter of professor of medicine. In an early illness, polio left him lame in the right leg. 6 of his 11 brothers and sisters died in infancy. However, Scott grew up to be a man over 6 feet and great physical endurance. According to Stoddard, an historical novel is a contradiction in terms. Fact is the underlying basis of history, fiction of the novel. Good history is the literature of knowledge, good novel is the literature of power. With a sense of the verity of history, it is imbued with the spirit of history, and at the same time, it satisfies the claims of imagination. In a historical novel, the novelist does not aim to present accurately and precisely the facts of history, nor does he principally seek to portray the life of historical characters. The aim of the historical novelist is to present life and manners, the way and feelings of the people of particular period chosen by him for his delineation. Historical novel differs from history. It is just magnetized history. To present and interpret facts is the historian's business, says E. R. Baker. To summon up our past, epoch to show man and woman alive in it and behaving as they must have behaved in the circumstances is the labor and joy of the life of the genuine historical novelist. In a historical novel, historical personages are subordinated to the expressions of the life of an epoch. Scott's interest in the old border tales and ballads had early been awakened, and he devoted much of his leisure to the exploration of the border country. His early years Scott spent in Sandino in the residence of his paternal grandfather. There his grandmother told him tales of old heroes. At the age of 8, he returned to Edinburgh. He attended Edinburgh High School and studied at Edinburgh University Arts and Law. 1783 and 86, 1789 to 92. At the age of 16, he had already started to collect old ballads and later translated into English Gottfried Verger's ballad The Wild Huntsman and Lenore and Gods of Verlichingen 1799 from John Wolfgang von Goethe's play. Scott was apprenticed to his father in 1786 and in 1792 he was called in the war. In 1799 he was appointed sheriff depute of county of Selkirk. Scott married in 1797 Margaret Charlotte Charpentier, daughter of Jean of Lyon and France. They had 5 children. The historical novelists present a realistic and charming pictures of life, manners, social traditions of that period. It gives a fluent novel should not, however, use the archaic and old-fashioned language of the times in which he places his incidents and characters. He must use the language of the period in which he is himself living so that the language may appear intelligible to the reader. The historical novel then to Kurt Baker is just a novel of manners. As a being fiction, it should not consist of history or pretended history. Well known events that personages should be subordinated exactly imagination and be familiar with the social history of the times his life of bygone epoch. It is necessary that his mind should be saturated period. An historical novelist of today writing about the 18th century must make himself thoroughly acquainted with the life of the 18th century and relive it in his imagination. In 1802 and 3 appears Scott's first major work, Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border, as a poet. Scott rose into fame with the publication of the Lay of the Last Minstrel 1805 about an old border country legend. He had burned its first version when his friends did not like it. Scott returned to the poem in 1802 when a horse had kicked him and he spent 3 days in bed. The Lay of the Last Minstrel became a huge success and made him the most popular author of the day. It was followed by Marmion 1808, a historical romance in tetrameter set in 1513 and concerning the attempts of learning of Lord Marmion is to marry the rich Lady Clara. In 1810 appeared The Lady of the Lake and the 1813 Rockway. Scott's last major poem, The Lord of the Isles, was published in 1850. Characteristics of his work. Historical novels लिखी हैं इन्होंने. द फाउंडर एंड ग्रेटर मास्टर ऑफ द हिस्टोरिकल नॉवल बेस्ड ऑन द हिस्ट्री ऑफ स्कॉटलैंड मेनली इंक्लूडिंग बेवर्ली, गाय मैनरिंग, ओल्ड मॉर्टेलिटी, रॉफ रॉय, द हार्ट ऑफ मिडलोथियन. किस किस सन में इन्होंने ये अपने वर्क लिखे हैं, इंक्लूड किए हैं हिस्ट्री ऑफ स्कॉटलैंड में. It goes to credit of Sir Walter Scott that he gave birth to the historical novel, which was later imitated by a host of historical novelists, including Dickens and so Scott conceived of a novel in which history would be allied with romance, and in which the past would be created with all the vigor and liveliness of the past. Scott's great success as an historical romancer and novelist lies in the fact that he successfully recreated the life of the past in his novels. He imparted life to dry bones of history. He achieved success in revitalizing the past for the completely identified himself with the social and political life of the times he described or portrayed in his novels. It is quite true that Scott possessed exceptional knowledge of the past, but his success did not lie in this. His knowledge merely helped him. He succeeded because, in place of hurling the past into the present and thereby disconnecting past and present, he boldly projected the present into the past, using his knowledge of contemporary life to humanize old world characters. Manners may change and fashions alter, but human nature remains consistent, and thus we have the apparent paradox that Scott's success as an historical novelist lay in his studied realism, that he made the men of Robin Hood's day and Shakespeare's day alive and actual by virtue of his acquaintance with the men and that lived around the tweed of his own day. Characteristics of his work: the tribal mode of life preserved in his highlands, the practices of feudal society on the country estates of large landowners, and the early age of capitalism in the big cities. The fate of the individuals are closely interwoven with historical events. He combines historical facts with romantic imagination. Scott's literary career marks the transition from romanticism to realism in English literature of 19th century. It is the glory of Scott that he presented the past history of France and England in a lifelike and realistic manner. He had in ample measure his historical imagination to recreate the past. The Scots Kenilworth will live during the period of Queen Elizabeth and Quentin Durward. We are taken to the times of Louis 11th in France. In Beverly, we move amidst the faithful followers of James second round about 1745. In old mortality, we pass through the troublesome day of Charles BT. Scott did not always roam in romantic region of the past, but often presented the actual Scottish life of his time. He sometimes left the wild romance of history for the romance of everyday life. He represented the Scottish life of his times in his romances just as Maria Edgeworth had represented Irish life in her novel. The most striking feature of Scott's romances is that, for the most part, they are pivoted on public rather than man's private interest. His novels, Save the Antiquary and Guy Mannering, give us an imaginative view not of mere individuals but of individuals as they are affected by the public strifes and social division of the age. Scott was eminently successful as an historical romancer. His novels present the life of the past age as colored by the imagination of the romancer. His novels show the strong tide of imagination released by the Romantic movement sweeping back into the past, flushing the stones of history with color and brightness. As we read his novels, we are transported to distant and ages and distant times, and move in the company of kings, queens, patriots, and rebels. We are away from the petty cares of mundane life for the time being, and bless that memory of the novelist who provide us an escape from the fever and fret of the world to beautiful and fine personages of history. Okay, thank you for watching.